Right. Okay. Welcome back. It's another Sunday morning. It's 9:44 here. And yeah, welcome back to a follow-up conversation. I think it's fair to say when we started doing this, we weren't sure where this would go, whether we would do more than one. And I guess the sort of what's become apparent is that this is such a broad subject and there's so many angles and nuances to it, that we wanted to carry on doing it. I think two reasons. One, we're hoping that it might help anybody who is considering quitting alcohol, considering discovering what the world looks like when you don't drink. And it's also really useful for us, we found. Just talking about it reminds both of us how this sort of valuable this journey is and how much there is to learn. And so we're carrying on. And I think we decided that when we spoke last week, we touched on one of the things that came up was the excuses that we tend to come up with to provide us with an excuse for drinking. I think, Matt, you mentioned the term booze o'clock. And it's really, really interesting how we and how society and how the media tends to normalize drinking alcohol, normalize what is essentially the consumption of poison, which in any way is going to need dealing with once it's in your body. So, yeah, so welcome back. Here we are again. We're going to try and keep this one a little bit shorter, I think. But yeah, the excuses that people come up with. So you touched on it, Matt. Maybe we'll start there. You said about how people say, well, it's okay because I only drink on a Friday or I only drink on a Wednesday. So yeah, let's start that conversation and see where we get to.
Sure. All right. Well, listen. Good morning, anyone who's watching or listening. It's good. As Mark pointed out, we're enjoying this. I think as much as hopefully anybody is watching this. It's kind of sharing our knowledge and sharing what we've been through, our experiences, and the reality is it's probably a bit of self-therapy for us both, which is quite nice. So, yeah. So the excuses we come up with to drink, gosh, there are many, or certainly I employed many. I think the boozer clock one is obviously the one that when you do stop, you look back on it and it makes you laugh. It's kind of this idea that by putting a time as to when you commence drinking, it makes everything okay. So how many people do I know? How many times did I, adamantly stick to the 6 o'clock rule, which was, I won't drink before 6 o'clock. But after that time, I would, drink a bottle of wine, a bottle and a half of wine, and but that does, that makes it okay because I only drink after 6, you know, and I think that's it's just a crazy notion. Now, obviously, drinking in the morning would be, the sign of a more severe, habit. But it's just the way we sort of, kid ourselves. I think that there is by having a time placed on it means that you are okay, that you have no issue. And I think so many people hide behind that. They go, oh, I only drink in the evening. But you know what? If you're drinking every evening, then it's an issue. So it is an excuse. The same on the weekends. I was never one to drink at lunchtimes on the weekend. Partly because I was probably still hungover from the night before, but the other reason was this sort of, belief that I only drink in the evening, so that must make it absolutely fine. So I think that is an excuse, if you like. The other sort of excuses that I'll touch on, and then I'll hand over, are, you know just, I think, in your mind, like, if I'm going to be brutally honest, when you're a drinker, you are a devious fucker. There's no doubt about it, because you look for a million and one excuses to have a drink. So you're playing this mind battle, really, because especially when you live with someone who doesn't really drink as much as you. I think that's kind of where I'm going at with this. So in your mind, you're thinking, right, it's Tuesday. I want to have a drink on Tuesday night. I don't normally drink on Tuesday night. How am I going to convince my other half that it's a good idea that we have a drink on Tuesday night? And you'll come up with all sorts of excuses. I'd find myself like going and buying expensive steak on a Tuesday, because then it would be an excuse to say, well, I really should have some red wine with this. It's such lovely meat. It's just bullshit like things that I'd come up with. Or just, the classic one is, well, I didn't have a drink last night, so let's have a drink, tonight. Or, oh, my diary's relatively free tomorrow, let's have a drink. Or any birthday, any celebration, anything, of course that's an excuse to drink. So there's tons out there. And God, I was the king of coming up with excuses. Or certainly, whether it be having to give an excuse to someone, or whether it be in my own mind justifying it to myself that it's fine, it's Thursday morning, I've got no meetings, I'll have that extra half a bottle of wine, or whatever it might be. So that's just me touching on the subject, really. I don't know, what do you think? What's going through your mind?
Yeah, no, I mean, just listening to you there, it's like, and it's just, it's such a fascinating area. There's, like we've said before, you could just do hours and hours on it. And, that thing about, I've bought a really expensive steak, so obviously, we'll have to have an expensive wine with it, is a really good example. I think I used to, talk about wine being an accompaniment to food. That actually, that whole thing about pairing wine with food. And I think that sort of simplistically feel like there's almost three types of drinkers. Almost and this is the real chunking down and a real sort of macro. And I think within those three areas, there's a scale, like anything. I think there's the non-problem drinkers. And I think we've touched on this before, but your wife, my wife, our dad, these people will have one or two glasses of wine. And for them, things like, this red wine pairs really nicely with this lamb. There's merit in that. It does.
Yeah.
Wine is used in cooking, and I think there's legitimacy to it. The second tier of drinkers is where I would put you and I, maybe on different scales. Who knows? I don't know, but I think there's a scale of those, and they're what I would call the people who just drink that are sort of well within the guidelines that society has somehow set as being acceptable for alcohol. And so, society decided that it's okay if you drink after 6 o'clock. Then you're fine. You don't have a problem. You're not a problem drinker. So those drinkers in that middle section will often just maybe have a couple of glasses, but very often they'll have a bottle of wine. So it's not okay, but it is okay because they're doing it during the periods. And so the world and society, will look at you. I think I had the outward impression at the time of somebody that was fine, that it was okay, but it was fine if you used the lens that society provides you with, which is it's okay because you're a weekend drinker and you only drink at 6 o'clock. You're not on a park bench drinking at 9:30 in the morning. So, and you've got a job and you're married, and so we're giving you a rubber stamp. You're okay. But of course, the point is that there's millions and millions of people that are inwardly dying, psychologically, spiritually, mentally, physically. They're dying because they just are. They're drinking too much, but it's worse because society says it's okay. And then I think you get another layer of drinkers where it becomes a physical addiction, and I think that's a whole different ball game. And if you fear that you're edging towards it, if you're in the middle section, then I think what we're saying to you is no one's preaching here. No one's saying to you you can't have a beer. Nobody's saying to you can't have a glass of wine, or even a nice whiskey at Christmas or whatever it is. That's not what we're saying. But I think there's a good bad scale here, which is really interesting. I think there's a sort of value damage scale. There's a value damage scale. And I think if you look at Delphine, your wife, and you look at Jan, my wife, there's like some value and benefit in having that glass of wine. It's nice. It's enjoyable. There's a psychological, I'm enjoying this wine, and the damage that it's doing to me is below the value. It's okay. It's okay. The issue is where, as soon as you have a second drink, you probably just about at a level out. You have a third drink, you're into this territory. In other words, the damage exceeds the value. You're harming yourself way more than you're benefiting yourself. And of course, that can just, very quickly, get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's where I'm saying to anybody who has created those rules. I did it myself. My drinking times were a Wednesday evening. Why Wednesday evening? It's the middle of the week. It's the middle of the week. It's hump day.
Why would you not?
Right? You have a drink on a Wednesday because that's what you do. Now, do you know what I do on a Wednesday? I still treat Wednesday slightly differently. Psychologically, for me, it's important during the week to have times where you're not on email doing the sort of, the run of the mill crap. We normally try and either watch a movie or we go do date night. We have a meal out. We do something nice. We do something good, but you're connecting with it in a way that's better. Friday nights I drank, Saturday nights I drank, and I used to drink on a Sunday because, a bit like your steak example, I made Sunday lunch a big thing. It still is in our house. It's the one day where we all try and sit down as a family. But of course, it was a great excuse to, I'm going to, and I, you'll think about, I used to offer to cook the Sunday dinner because I knew it allowed me an opportunity to, I'll start the dinner about 4 on a Sunday afternoon, football on in the background.
Glass of wine.
Have a glass of wine while I'm doing this, go all, what was that chef's name, the cook, the old fashioned one that was, I can't think of his name now.
Yeah. No.
Him, and then it still gets you. We'll think about it. We'll get there. So yeah, it's I agree. It's a false economy.
Yeah, it's so true. I love what you just said about the fact that society puts this image on what's right and what's wrong, and I think we lean towards that. I certainly leant towards it, massively. Drinking a bottle of wine was probably not that bad, and I was still going to work. I was functioning. I had a job and never lost a job or anything through alcohol. I made mistakes aplenty, but and I wasn't anywhere near my full potential. But I functioned, and was I a functioning alcoholic? I suppose in the if you put it in black and white, I probably was, because alcohol was so important in my life. I couldn't imagine life without it, and at that time. And another thing, like excuses. I mean, oh God, honestly, I was a pro at it. I reckon, seriously, if Oscars were handed out for basically finding a time when you can get away with drinking, and I'm not talking at 10 in the morning or anything, but of an evening. I was superb at it. Like what you touched on, football, Champions League's on tonight. It could be two teams I have no interest in. Football's on, better have a drink. Do you know what I mean? Parties, honestly, I would organize a lot of parties. We had people around like on a regular basis. Now, and this sounds awful, but I do like having people around. I do like, I live in Paris now, and I have an apartment, so barbecues are out of the question. But in the UK, when we had a garden, the summer, it would be get people around. But the reality was, it wasn't about, the lamb burgers that I was going to do, or the, Waitrose sausages or whatever it was. It was about the booze. it was about the excuse. It was about the reality. It was that if I knew the weather was going to be good and I rounded up some friends and I said, come round for 12, I could basically start drinking at 12 and we would drink pretty much all day. And, you know, all afternoon, should I say, and evening. Now, don't get me wrong, I had great pleasure in those events and great pleasure in seeing friends and, you know, now I would call acquaintances in some ways, because often when you are in those drinking situations, you mix with some people who really are just acquaintances. You call them friends, but they're not really what I would consider now a real friend. But you know, nice people, nice times, and all that. But it was in many ways an excuse. It was creating an event so that I could indulge in drinking. Now there would be people there who would be doing the same thing and thinking the same thing, thinking this is great. We've been invited to this do. I know it's at Matt's house. There'll be tons of booze. Bloody brilliant. I think you've been to a few. Um, but you know, there you go. And I totally get your Sunday thing. I mean, even just cooking. I mean, for God's sake, that was an excuse for me. You know, oh, I'm doing the dinner. I'll just have a glass of wine, darling, whilst I'm doing the dinner. And of course, that would lead to a bottle, and I'd pour her a glass, and then, you know, drink pushing as well. God, I was good at that too. I mean, that's a whole other subject, but it ties into this excuses we come up with to drink. So here's one I had, which worked a treat, was I knew that if my wife had a drink, then I basically, you know, the padlocks were off, if you like. I knew that if I poured her a drink, and then I'd be very good at topping up glasses as well. So, you know, I'd see she'd nearly finished. She used to work a lot at the time in the evenings because of the job she had. But it was fun work. So she would have a glass of wine, and then I'd go and top her glass up. So she would have had two, and then she would be, you know, her defenses would be down a bit, and she would relax, and then I would, you know, be able to drink more. That's the reality. You know, that was how it played out in my head. So yeah, there are excuses aplenty, and I'm sure I'll think of more. But yeah,
Yeah,
I was pretty shit hot at it.
yeah. I mean, there's a great book, and a guy, you put me onto him, and I can't think of his name. We'll put it in the show notes. You'll think about it. And he's the guy who said, you know, the only drink that I ever had any control over was the first drink. That's
Yeah.
the one I could make a decision over. So we'll have to find his name, and I'll have to include it. But it was really interesting to me, because I think by the time you have, you know, the second one, you know, like you said, you start to, your brain goes into a different place, and you're off to the races. And on that note of, you know, just what you were talking about there, funnily enough, actually on Friday evening, you know, I live in the UK now, and we're not known for the best weather in the world. But it was a lovely day on Friday. It was really, really lovely. And of course, the world kind of comes out in this country when, as soon as the sun comes out, everybody's outside. And I drove into town on Friday night to get a takeaway, just to get a takeout. I drove past a pub, and it was packed. It was full. It was full of people out. Friday evening, it would have been about 6:30, 7 o'clock. And, you know, I drove past it and I thought, that looks nice. That does look nice. You know, it's Friday evening. I could relate to that.
I still can. And yeah.
Yeah. Then as I drove past and I got closer, you know, and this is an interesting concept, is that I sort of macro conveniently bundled that into this lovely sort of silk covered concept of a nice drink on a Friday. It was lovely. But as I got closer and I saw the detail, there were guys of my age, guts hanging across, like into their bed, you know, like nudging towards their knees, cigarettes on the table, pints of beer. And I suddenly just realized that unless you're in that first category of drinker, that you're going to just have a glass of wine and that's it, you're poisoning your body. You're putting poison into your body, pure and simple. These people that I'm driving past are going to feel the consequences of this. It's the Friday night, so it's fine. It's the, like I said last week, it's the sort of acceptable face of abusing your body. Yes, this is harmful to me. No, this isn't going to do me any good, but it's sunny. It's a Friday night. It's what the world does. No one's going to be, it's, oh yeah, it's Friday night. Let's go to the pub. And I think we've touched on this before. You can go to the pub and you can have just as good a time. In fact, I think you have a better time because you haven't got the stress and the worry of all the other shit that you have to deal with when you're drinking. So, and it's an interesting point. We're not talking about the first type of drinkers. There's loads and loads of people that I know who just have a couple of drinks and it's fine. It's that middle section, and the world is full of them, and they're all doing it. But like it's that thing. It's Friday night. The sun is shining. We can go to the pub, but we're going to damage ourselves. And as a follow-on from that, Jan, my wife, she's just doing her, there's this thing called Les Mills, which is a form of it's an exercise class, basically. And she's qualifying to become a Les Mills instructor, which is great. And she's really into it, and she's worked really hard. And yesterday she had to do a class. She had to actually do her own, video that was filmed, and there was like 15 people in the class. Wow. Pretty stressful. I was just going to the football, so I was fine. But she got a few of her friends to come along, obviously, and two of her friends showed up, and afterwards they went and had coffee. And one of the friends was like, "Oh, I need a packet of crisps. Oh, and had a packet of crisps and then a sausage roll." Now, if you live in the States, or if you don't know what a sausage roll is, you might do, but in the UK, it's about that long. It's full of sausage meat, and it's surrounded by this sort of almost deep fried kind of greasy, full of fat, salt shit, basically.
Yeah.
Just delicious. But, they'd just done an hour's class. And of course, she'd been to the pub the night before and had a few drinks. And the other girl who was there, both fine, these just normal, like very much in that middle tier of drinking that we've talked about. She'd been out the night before because her husband had been trying to reduce his cholesterol, had taken a sort of period off drinking, and it hadn't made a blind bit of difference. So they were just like, "Oh, fuck it, we're just going to go to the pub then." So they like re-legitimize themselves. Anyway, the point of this long-winded explanation is that they all went and had drinks on a Friday night because that's what you do. That's the idea. But like Jan said, they were suffering a bit. One of them, the class was at 11. She didn't get out of bed till 10. She sort of peeled herself out of bed, went to the class, did the class, and you pay for it, whereas, again, I don't want to sound preachy, and I don't want, like I said, if this mission isn't to stop people drinking alcohol, it's to explain to people that, there is a way of looking at it. And just because, society has come up with a set of rules that allow you to say, "I'm cooking, so I'm drinking. It's Friday, so I'm drinking." And where I end up with in all of this is that alcohol traps you. It fucking traps you. It like, you go to the pub because almost without thinking, before you've even engaged your brain, the key's in the front door and you're on your way to the pub because the sun's shining. It's Friday night, and that's what we do on a Friday night. We go to the pub and we drink. 2 hours in, you've had 3 or 4 drinks, and you're now, you are now going, you've compromised yourself, right? You can't drive. If an accident happened and you were needed, you could not deal with it. You will not sleep. Your sleep this evening is not going to be great, right? You're going to have to deal with processing this. You're probably going to eat late. You're probably going to go and have a late dinner, and you're going to feel tired. So it's really hard to have this conversation without sounding like a lefty tree hugger or like some sort of. But
yeah, it is.
You've got to at some point say, it took society and the world a long time to agree that smoking was bad for you. It took a long time before, there was a long period of time where it was acceptable. It was recommended, well, some of the advertising slogans were, "For your throat's sake, smoke this brand." Doctors recommend smoking. You know, it took a long time. And I think that because of the influence of the alcohol industry and the media and, you know, popular like culture, alcohol has done played a blinder because it's got itself way out in front of all of this. But at some point, we're going to have to we're going to have to call this what it is. We're going to have to look at this and say what it is. You know, there is no level of drinking that is good for you. It just isn't. You know, even
Yeah.
value thing.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's a real tough one. The whole health thing, because I think first of all, like, just a point I kind of want to make is, I think anybody watching or listening to this, um, you know, you probably wouldn't be doing so unless you know us, or unless you're looking for help or advice. I think that's the reality of it. And I remember Russell Brand talking about his journey through drugs and alcohol. And he always, and still does, beat the drum that abstinence is the only way. And I remember reading that, or hearing or watching him, and thinking, fuck that, there's just no way. Do you know what I mean? Maybe reduce, maybe cut down, maybe be careful, whatever the world, what the excuses are always there, aren't they? But he's right. It is true. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, and you should look at it as fortunately, because as we've been through this whole thing, and I wouldn't go back. I just wouldn't want to go back. I agree with you. Those Friday evenings, afternoons, when you see people in the sunshine, it is a trigger. It's a trigger for me, but a trigger in the sense that it makes me reminisce a bit. It's like that. Oh yeah, that was nice. But then you're right. You do stop yourself. You do think, yeah, but I wouldn't want any of the consequences of that. And you know what? Like, look at this Friday night. What did I do this Friday night? I went into Saint Lazare in Paris. I bought some coffee from Nespresso. I phoned our parents. I came back. I bought a train ticket for my wife. I came back. She was getting ready. She's gone away for the weekend, and cooked dinner. And before you know it, it's you've had dinner and it's 10 o'clock at night. Your evening's done, and then I'm looking forward to reading a book. So yeah, coming back to that, I think the reality is drinking is fine for those who don't have a problem, but if you've got a problem, in your mind, there's always something. The question will come into your mind: am I drinking too much? I hear about you saying about a friend who was trying to get cholesterol down and taking it easy. That to me, in their mind, they have already asked the question: am I maybe drinking too much?
Yeah.
Because
And the
they're
other thing,
making an effort to try and not to. And it's it's commendable, don't get me wrong. I think any trial and error is good. You're never going to succeed at something the first time. Do you know what I mean? No one ever got into a Formula One car and won a race without ever being in one. It takes trial and error and effort and all that sort of thing. But until you can see the benefits, I strongly believe that the only way is abstinence in the end.
the other thing as well is that the mind is an absolute bastard with this,
Oh,
because
it's a fucker.
it persuades you that it's great fun, and loads of people, if they are listening to this, will be thinking, it's the one thing I enjoy. It gives me enormous pleasure. But the reason for that is because you haven't experienced the unbelievable, unparalleled pleasure and joy that is available when you don't do it. And the thing that is, I think one of the reasons why a lot of people don't do it is it's really hard to convey the joy and the pleasure that you get from not drinking, because the way that you convey it is you talk about the everyday ordinary things. We said on an earlier conversation, going to the movies, and is a great thing when you don't drink. And I'm sure there's loads of people listening to that thinking, fuck off, go to the movies. Is that all you can come up with? Like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
your best the best thing, I'm really struggling with this. And I'm trying to think what I'm going to do if I don't drink. And you've just told me to go and watch fucking Guardians of the Galaxy on a Friday night. That sounds terrible. Well, you are right. It does sound a bit shit, but it isn't when you're not drinking. It's such a weird thing. It reconnects you, and it's a reminder of this wholesome, like joy and sense of reconnection with the world. You know, the stuff you did when you were a kid that used to get that sort of childlike excitement about just doing something pretty ordinary, but you know, but fun. You get that back when
Yeah.
you know, when you quit drinking, and so you it and conversely, I mean, this thing about, you know, I miss drinking because it's where I get my pleasure, and I'm gonna get loads of fun if I drink. I don't believe it anymore. I think that you might enjoy the first drink, you might enjoy the second drink, but beyond that, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. You're going to pay
Yeah.
for it. You know, the girls that did the class with Jan yesterday, one of them said they're going on vacation shortly, and they've got this night out which they do, a sort of perennial thing. They go to Nikki Beach, they spend a fortune. There's a
Oh,
crowd of them that go.
so
It ends with, you know, brandies and cigars and champagne. It's a big boozy day out, you know. And she's already kind of dreading it, scared. Like she said, "Oh, I might drive this time, or I might." And what I'm saying to you is that it assumes the role of something that's brilliant and that everybody's going to enjoy, and we're going to get hammered, and we're going to drink loads, and we're going to spend loads of money. But actually, at a very basic level, you don't really enjoy it. You know, the conversations you have when you're drunk are meaningless. You
mm.
don't. You're not going to remember it in the morning.
You don't often remember. Yeah, that's the thing. You know, it's so true. I mean, that is just a great, the best excuse. Oh my God, that was number one excuse for me, to a sense, going on holiday. What an excuse that is to drink. I'm on holiday. I can drink every night. Even if I didn't go anywhere, I'd be like, I'm on holiday. And that was bloody brilliant, you know. And then that's one for a whole other episode, I think. But you know, holiday is just what it means, and I think we've touched on it before. But yeah, just you know, quickly from me, just something that made me smile deeply is you talked about the friend that came to Jan's session yesterday that she organised, and was feeling it a bit, and then afterwards had to have a packet of crisps and a sausage roll. Um, my my brother-in-law, he you know, not gonna lie, I don't know if he'll listen to this, but even if he does, then he would have to be in agreement, because he is overweight. And you know, he kind of got sort of into running. Like I've been into running for a long time, much more so obviously since I quit drink. But so occasionally when I go down there on a Saturday, get up at like 11 o'clock, or he get up, you know, 10ish, and then I would have been up for ages, and then we'd go, right, let's go for a run. He'd get his gear on, we'd go and drive and park in south of France, so very beautiful, wonderful. Go for a run, probably manage like, you know, half an hour, pretty good for him, slow pace, but that's fine. He's up and out and doing it, you know. I hugely commendable. I take nothing away from him for doing that. But I come home, right, and it would normally be about 12:30, right? First thing you do, massive glass of rosé, like massive, in his gym gear, in his running gear, sat on the sofa, gut out, massive glass of rosé. And in French you would say, ah, c'est la récompense après la dépense, which basically means the reward after the effort. And you're like, yeah, that's not going to work, mate. Do you know what I mean? That's like,
I mean, I'm laughing, but you know, not laughing. I mean, it's funny because I know the guy and he's hilarious. Makes me laugh,
yes.
and you know, he, you know, look, there's no doubt about it. You know, he's put on a few pounds, but he is a good example of a lot of people that we know. I know loads of him. You know, I'm
Mm-mm-mm.
surrounded by him. You know, there's people, most people we know are him. You know, he's got a good job. He's successful at work. You know, he's a bright, intelligent, funny,
Yep.
endearing human being.
Lovely guy.
There is a future better version of him that I would love to introduce him to, and that's what this ultimately is all about: is creating a framework and a playbook that allows him to find slimmer, happier, fitter, healthier, more connected, less stressed, less anxious, less fearful, more productive, more contributory, happier version of him. And when he's back from his run, you know, if he switched that large glass of rosé wine, even if it was just a cookie or a brownie or a big cup of coffee, something that
Mm.
was, you know, because I think
At least have a fucking shower.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So cool. Okay, so look, final thing from me, because I think we can there's lots more to talk about. But yeah, I think that the sort of message really is that there are lots of excuses to legitimize drinking. If you drink one or two and you're fine with it, that's okay. But like you said, if you're watching this, then there's a good chance you're thinking about giving up alcohol. And my message would be, look, try the world on for size without booze. Just try it. You know, try it for 30 to 60 to 90 days. And my advice would be, don't do the fucking dry January or sober October or whatever it is.
Mm.
Do it at a time that is outside of that, where you decide. And maybe, I think we you know, if we haven't mentioned it before, you know, Matt, you've written a book, and I think we are going
Yep.
to talk a little bit about that at some stage, even if we just sort of talk about the chapters of that. But I think maybe one of the areas where we could perhaps focus on is, look, okay, I really would like to try this on for size, but I'm shitting myself. I'm scared about it. I don't really know where to start. So maybe, you know, maybe the next thing is we can start talking about, okay, this is how you plan to quit. You know, this is what you can do. These are the books you can read. These are the things you can do. Maybe talk about some of your experiences, Matt. Maybe talk about the
Yeah.
book. Talk about where you've got to get to within yourself. Because I think, you know, there's a classic thing that is, you know, reasons come before actions. And I think you need a reason, you need a why, you need to get to the point where you're ready. You need to be, you know, I had a reason, I had a why, you had a reason, you had a
Yep.
why. And maybe we could talk about that. But other than that, I think we're done. That's a good conversation. But is there anything else to add?
So just three little things, I think, and then I'm wrapped up for today. So yeah, the first one is you know, and I'll go into this in more detail, but it's about the pain. You know, the reality is if you're going to be honest here, it's about the pain. When the pain gets too great, that's when your call to action often is. And it just depends where you are on that journey, you know, and what that pain looks like to you. And we'll talk more about that, because I talk about it in my book. And I think, yeah, really just letting anyone out there know, yeah, I wrote a book. I started writing it 3 years ago, to be honest, and it's taken me a long time for many reasons. I will share those, but I'm now at a point now where it's been edited. It's had one cover design. I'm not overly happy with it, so I'm looking for another one, which is in progress, and it's going to need typesetting, and then I will look at publishing it. So more to come on that. Lots more to come on that. Which is exciting. Yeah, I just want to finish with something you said, which is absolutely fantastic. That I just think, wow, in fact, I might have to nick it. Anybody watching this, do you know what? If we can give you what we'd like to do, in fact, and I'm stealing this, so I'm reading it because I wrote it down, is we'd like to introduce you to the better version of yourself, because there is a better version of you. And trust me, if you're struggling with alcohol, if it's a problem, if it's something you're worried about, you know, getting rid of it instantly makes the pain go away. And that better version of you is out there. And if we can help to introduce, you know, you to that better person, then we've done our job.
Brilliant. Great place to end. All right, nice one, dude. We'll call it a wrap there then, because that was really, really good. And yeah, you've dropped the book bomb now. So
I have.
yeah. So I'm really looking forward to that. I've read it, obviously. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, it is the best book I've ever read. And I think that's partly because you're my brother. So there is there's a connection, but I think it'd be really interesting to sort of deconstruct that book in discussion for anybody who's interested in listening. So let's call it a wrap, and we'll regroup at the next time.